各位朋友，大家晚上好！欢迎各位参加由 Mentoring 导师学院和欧洲导师与教练协会 EMCC 联合主办的导师技术在线论坛100场。今天是第34场，由来自德国的 Kirsten Dierolf 女士主讲。她今天要分享的话题是督导如何聚焦解决方案。那首先让我们来认识一下 Kirsten 女士。Kirsten 她是 EMCC 认证的大师级导师教练，也是 EMCC 认证的督导，他同时也是 ICF 大师级教练 MCC， 是 ICF TCC 和 MCC 的认证评审官，他也是 ICF 德国分会的前任会长，同时也是福布斯教练委员会的成员。他在2001年的时候创办了全球化督导导师教练培训学院，叫 Solutions Academy。那这家学院它所有的培训课程也是得到了 EMCC 和 ICF 的认证。那他在他的这个督导导师教练实践中，尤其推崇聚焦解决方案的方法。为此，他也撰写了很多相关的书籍以及文章。这个也是我们今天要分享话题的一个核心点。今天晚上的讲座由欧洲导师与教练协会和 Mentoring 联合主办。欧洲导师与教练协会简称 EMCC， 是总部设在比利时布鲁塞尔的专门为导师与教练提供国际资格认证的非营利性组织。Mentoring 是总部位于比利时布鲁塞尔的全球化导师服务咨询公司，业务遍及6大洲35个国家和地区。我们提供的导师技术课程、服务流程标准以及服务团队都获得了 EMCC 的专业认证。Mentoring 中国是注册在上海的中俄合资企业，我们是在2019年11月，首次把欧洲导师技术正式引入中国。那现在我们把今天的舞台交给我们的演讲嘉宾。Now let's warmly welcome Ms. Kirsten Dierolf.
Hello, my name is Kirsten Dierolf, and today I would like to talk to you about solution-focused supervision. Solution-focused supervision is a respectful and very effective way of supervising other coaches. It is a social constructionist coaching approach, and I would like to walk you through and let you know about the specifics and the characteristics of solution-focused supervision. My name is Kirsten Dierolf. As you can see here, I am a master practitioner, EMCC. I have been accredited as master practitioner team coaching, and also I'm an accredited supervisor with the ICF. I'm a master certified coach, and I am also certified with the advanced credential team coaching by the ICF. Here you can see the slides. My great passion is coach training and coach supervision, and I've been doing it since 2008, and I really, really love it very much. And my trainings have been accredited with ICF since 2015 and with EMCC since 2021, and all of our trainings are accredited by the ICF and also by EMCC. I've been training online since 2005. Already told you about all of my credential, and I've been coaching in many different industries. You can see here that I have 3 sons, 1 husband, and what I love when I'm not sitting in front of a computer is I love reading, I love dancing, making music, hiking, canoeing, and camping. And here you can see a little bit about what that looks like. So you can see my boat and my tent. This is what my husband and I like to do when we are not working. So without further ado, I would like to jump in to social constructionist supervision and would like to tell you a little bit about the characteristics of social constructionist supervision as opposed to or as in contrast with other possible approaches. Here I would like to tell you about the Galveston Declaration. Social constructionist approaches are not only solution focused, so narrative therapy in practice, solution focused practice, collaborative practice, maybe also appreciative inquiry. So there's a whole bunch of coaching approaches that would label themselves social constructionist. And social constructionist means that we are interested in what happens between the noses more than what happens inside a person. So we always think and say the action is in the interaction. What we want to do is we want to look at what people are doing together. We want to look at what the supervisor and the supervision client are doing together that helps the supervision client. We want to look at what the coach and the clients do together that helps them, rather than go into the individual psyche and analyze the person in front of us. So why is this declaration called the Galveston Declaration? Practitioners from narrative, collaborative and solution focus got together in Galveston. It's a little island in the United States, in Texas, and thought about what differentiates our approaches from other possible approaches. And they framed their differentiation in this declaration by saying, we value this thing rather than this other thing. So we're not saying that this is more true or better or anything like that, but it's just it's a description of what we value. And I think I might be able to make this attractive to you. And also, if you're interested in these kinds of philosophical distinctions, I would really commend you, because normally we are not talking about the foundation of our approaches. We're often talking about tools or new things that we can do together with our clients. The backdrop of the idea of why are we thinking the way that we are thinking, the philosophy is very, very seldomly talked about. And that's what I would like to invite you to do with me today. So here is the first bit of the Galveston Declaration. You can see it is about, we value pluralism and differences of view more than singularity of view. And when you are engaging in supervision, I think it becomes quite obvious that you will always have to engage with differences of view, and that there is no one right way of doing things. So the supervision client has their view, you as a supervisor have your view, the client of the supervision client will also have their view. And that's why we value differences of view without deciding what is the right thing, more than valuing a singularity of view. So it is about acknowledging the multiple truths that we can identify when a coaching client, a coaching supervision client comes to us, rather than pretending that we know what is right. So our supervision will be very close to coaching. We as supervisors won't pretend that we know what is right for this coaching supervision client. We will collaborate with the client. We will acknowledge all the truths that are in the system, and we will always try to be responsive to the particularities of the context rather than applying generalities. For example, we would not want to diagnose the coaching supervision's client and say, for example, oh, you are dealing with a very dominant red personality, or use Myers-Briggs or any of these kind of diagnostic instruments, but we would always want to talk to our coaching supervision client and ask questions like, well, suppose you were the coach that you want to be, what difference would it make? How would your client notice? How would you notice? What would be observable in the interaction? We would explore multiple social realities rather than searching for a single correct reality. With our preference for acknowledging multiple truths, obviously supervision becomes a little bit more complex than if, as a supervisor, I would say, I know what is right, or I know what is the right way to coach, but it becomes much more fitting to the supervision client if we are able to talk to the supervision client in ways that make the supervision client stronger. And we're also aware that we are exploring multiple cultures, contexts, interactions, and influences. If I am supervising someone from China, for example, I cannot pretend to know what good coaching is in the Chinese context. Of course, I know what good coaching is in ICF and EMCC terms, but do I know what will work with a middle-aged manager in a large Chinese corporation? No, I don't. So I really have to explore the specifics and the particularities of the context together with my coaching supervision client, and trust that my coaching supervision client knows what will work in their context. The second preference is around valuing differences rather than fixed states. So when a coaching supervision client has an idea of, I can never, or an idea of a fixed or rigid identity, we would always try to soften it. We would soften it by asking, okay, so you're now telling me that you always have trouble coaching female leaders, for example. That's interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about what is the least challenging female leader that you have worked with? And what worked with this person? So we're trying to soften self-descriptions that are tied to a problem. We would invite our coaching supervision clients to describe stories of unique outcomes, of successes, so that they can experience themselves as resourceful, as whole, as people with good intentions who are trying their best. As I said in the beginning, we regard every interaction as mutual influence. And that sounds very obvious at first. But sometimes you find coaches and coaching supervisors who are collecting lots of tools, and they're analyzing the situation, and then they're trying to find the correct tool for this exact scenario. Whereas we would say it's not possible in a complex human system to use the correct tool. But we're always talking coaching supervisor and coaching supervision client together so that we influence one another. My experience is that I am learning as much from my coaching supervision clients as they are learning from me. It is always mutually influential. And what we are saying in coaching and in supervision is that the client is always in the center, but the supervisor is fully there, but decentered. In narrative practice, we call this decentered but influential. So that's our stance. We would open the space for our supervision client to explore, and would be there as a human being, collaborating with our supervision clients to help our supervision client to be the best coach that they can be. So be fully there in this collaboration. We recognize people as persons embedded in relationships, and we wouldn't treat anyone as a separate individual. So I'm hearing from my colleagues in Asia that this is something that is very compatible. I mean, you cannot really say Asia because it's too big and there isn't such a thing as Asian culture. But my experience working in Singapore, a little bit in China and in Japan, is that the consideration for other people is much, is more close to people's heart in these areas than it might be in Europe. And of course, I'm generalizing and stereotyping, which I shouldn't, because every case, as you know, is different. But this is a preference that we might share potentially with you, recognizing that people are embedded in relationships and that we can always make use of these relationships when we are supervising by asking questions like, suppose you became, let's say somebody comes with an ethical problem to a supervision session, and you could ask this person, suppose 10 years later you looked back on this difficult situation, what would you be proud of having done? And then the person says, well, you know, I would be proud having done blah, blah, blah. Okay, so if you have done this, what difference would it make to you? What difference would it make to other people? How would other people respond, so that we will always have the other people in the room, at least not thinking about them. And we are very positive and always assume positive intent. So even when a coach, as a supervision client, made a mistake, we would try not to blame them, but we would try to experiment with restorative justice practices. Let's say the coach broke confidentiality. Of course, as a supervisor, we have to respond to that, but we wouldn't respond by blaming our client, but by looking for ways in which the client can repair the situation, in which the client, we would assume a positive intention, and we would then go looking for ways of making it right. The next big block is about expanding choice rather than removing choice, about living with curiosity, and about adopting a not knowing stance even as a supervisor. Now you might say, as a supervisor, but doesn't a supervisor have to know things? Yes, of course we know things, but we know that we don't know everything about the situation our coaching supervision client is in. So we will try to be genuinely curious about what is it that our supervision client wants? What is it that they are aspiring to? Who do they want to be as coaches? And there is no way that we as coaching supervisors can know that. We need to ask questions. And these questions open the space for enlivened possibilities. So we are interested in asking our coaching supervision clients to tell their stories in ways that open possibilities. We would try and talk about what is wanted rather than talking about what is not wanted. We would never impose a change of an intervention, but always invite the coaching supervision clients to entertain change. Another characteristic is that we can also, in our coaching supervision, proactively include others. So it is possible to integrate client feedback, or even have a supervision session in which the supervisor interviews a couple of the clients, the supervision clients, the coaching clients of our supervision client, to find out what is this coach doing especially well. So really being inclusive, not pretending that we are an island together, alone somewhere, but that we're always together. The fourth is that we are valuing responsibility and generativity rather than a constraint or deficit focus. In solution-focused supervision, we are trying to build on what is already working. We're noticing resources, competencies, and possibilities, rather than figuring out what is wrong with our clients. we would be always trying to help our client tell their stories in ways that makes them stronger. Also, as I said before, we privilege an ethics of caring and restorative justice rather than moral judgment and shaming or blaming. And number two, we are aware, and I think most of us are aware these days, that it is very important for the future generations to anticipate the effects of our resource use, and that's a preference that we try to also support through our coaching supervision. So here you have the 4 Galveston pillars. I am just going to click through them again. Valuing differences of view rather than pretending we can know what is right. Valuing differences rather than pretending things are fixed in a complex system. There is nothing that is fixed. Valuing expanding choice rather than removing choice, and valuing generativity rather than constraint. This means that in the coaching supervision, we would try to ask our clients to search for progress and for resources. So a solution-focused question that searches for progress might be, in your best scenario, how would you respond to a client like this? Or the resource-oriented question might be, what have you already done that goes in the right direction? So we're looking for progress and resources. What we're not looking for, or looking for less, probably not looking for, are explanations and deficits. So I know it's a little bit polemical here, and I know that modern day psychoanalysts are no longer only looking for explanation and deficits. They are looking for what makes life easier for their clients. So please bear with me. I don't want to offend anyone here. But in psychoanalysis, for example, you are looking for an explanation for why someone not thriving, why someone has difficulties. Because the assumption is that if you know why someone has difficulties, then you have identified the cause and you can get rid of it. And in solution focus, we're not interested in the causes. We're only interested in trying to make things better. In positive psychology, we're interested in why people are happy, why people are thriving, why people are resilient. And the why question isn't very important in solution focus. And in quality management, you could say that you are looking for the mistakes in order to make them better. So that's the search space for progress. So solution focused coaching supervision is very much focused on what are you already able to do and what is the next step, being incremental, because we know it is very difficult in a complex system to define a clear waterfall path from where you are now to where you want to be. So here you can see a couple of other postmodern solution-focused supervision principles that I've taken from Frank Thomas's book, Solution-Focused Supervision, which was published, I think, 2013. Talk you through a summary here. As I said, it's a commitment to the amplification of successes. It's about sharing power and flattening the supervision hierarchy with our clients. So as a solution-focused supervisor, as I said, it's a mutual influence. We, as solution-focused supervisors, will try and collaborate. Of course, in supervision, as differentiated from coaching, sometimes your client will ask you for advice. But when we give advice, we would always try and we would give the advice, but we would always give the choice of whether to take on board this advice We would leave that choice to our supervision client. And we would try and brainstorm different options rather than giving the one correct answer. Our idea is that change is constant and inevitable. So there isn't everything in human life is changing all the time. So what we're going to look for is useful change, and we're going to try and amplify it. That also has the advantage of not generalizing or catastrophizing. My client is always, well, no, not always, because change is constant and inevitable. We are using presuppositional language. So if we say, when has there been a time in which this was easier, we are presuming that there was such a time. And in solution-focused supervision, the language we use is carefully evaluated. It doesn't mean that we are choosing the right tools or something, but we're trying to, with our language, we're trying to invite our clients to tell stories in ways that make them stronger. Just imagine if you ask a problem-oriented question, for example, why are you always having difficulties with female clients? And what the story is that you are then inviting, rather than saying, what are your successes? Where have you already been able to coach a female executive, and what is working? Even if your idea, supervision client, is that nothing is working, let's go look for the small, even if they're small, signs of progress. Curiosity and respect, assuming this is a therapy book, this is why it says therapists, yeah, so, but assuming the competence, strength, and resourcefulness of our coaching supervision clients, and focusing on their goals, and not focusing on our supervision client's problem. Sometimes you have coaching supervision in which the supervisor and the coach are going to talk about the supervision client's client. So they are analyzing the person who's not there. And in solution-focused supervision, we would not be doing that at all. We would listen with very big ears, and we would listen for resources and goals and have a future orientation. When our supervision client is telling us about their successes, we would ask questions like, how did you do that? So that the supervision client can replicate. So we are attributing their successes and exceptions to their agency, so what they did, rather than, oh yeah, it just so happened, it was luck. Maybe it was also luck, but suppose it wasn't luck. What did you contribute? So this is a little overview of the background of solution-focused coaching supervision. If you want to learn more, you can go on our website. You can read my blog at solutionsacademy.com/blog. And here is my contact detail. We run regular courses in solution-focused coaching supervision. Here you find the registration link. And we also have many accredited supervisors on our team. Thank you very much for listening. I'm very honored to have been here with you today. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you for your sharing. Now is the Q&A time. And if people have any questions, you can unmute and ask, or just put it in the chat box. 那现在是我们的嘉宾问答环节，如果大家有问题的话，可以直接提问，也可以把问题发在聊天框内。然后其他平台的朋友们呢，我们的工作人员会把你们的问题收集起来，然后反馈到这里。
介绍一下他那个宣言的由来或者故事吧。好奇，谢谢。
Hi, Kirsten. This friend asks a question about the story of the Galveston Declaration. Yes, how did it come from?
So there were a couple of social constructionist practitioners from therapy, from organizational work, from coaching, and they came from solution-focused practice, from collaborative practice, and also from narrative practice. And they had realized that, well, we are actually standing on the same philosophical basis, but we are different approaches. Why don't we get together and talk about what is common rather than what divides us? Of course, there are differences between collaborative practice and narrative practice and solution-focused practice, but there is much more that these approaches have in common rather than what divides them. So they got together to figure out, okay, so what do we value? What do we want? And there is an article also on the Galveston Declaration that you can read, and maybe I can find it and post it in the chat, but it was published in the Journal for Systemic Therapies.
Thank you. 那关于就是我们刚才嘉宾分享的这个加尔维斯顿宣言呢，它是来自就是当时是由一群就是治疗师，然后组织里的工作人员、教练，然后他们呢对这个建构主义的话题很感兴趣，他们就是分别对这种叙述性实践和口头实践都有各自的观点。他们发现就是这些实践当中有一些共同的方法，大家可能具体采用的方法不太一样，但是都是基于某种哲学上的观点。所以大家在想，我们不妨聚集在一起探讨一下，就这些实践它有哪些共同点，我们就一起来讨论，这些人就聚在一起讨论我们主张哪些观点，可能不太主张某种观点。那关于这个加尔维斯顿宣言，它是有一篇文章的，我们的这个 Kirsten 女士她也把这个文章的出处分享在了我们的聊天框里，兴趣朋友可以到时候去找到这篇文章来读一读。
And I just posted a link to the article in the chat.
Yes, I got it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Super, thank you.
还有其他朋友有问题吗？ Is a comment in the chat box. It said sharing regard every interaction as mutual influence. Good comment. This friend likes it very much. Thank you.
I think it's really important. Sometimes as supervisors, mentors, or coaches, we can fool ourselves into that we are paid to change the client. It's to think of it as a one direction interaction. We acknowledge that it's always a two-way street, that it's always a mutual interaction. We become more humble. And I think we also have more fun and have a richer life as a supervisor and coach and mentor, as we are also aware of our own learning and development as we are collaborating with our clients.
我们刚才 Kirsten 女士因为分享了一句话，里面说，就是我们可能在跟客户，就是在交流的过程当中，我们要把每一次互动当做一个互相影响的过程，因为我们不论作为导师、教练还是督导。因为如果我们只是把它当成一种，我们可能是收费服务，只是当成一种单向的输出，可能对我们自身而言带来的好处就相对而言就不那么丰富。那如果我们把它当做一种就是双向的两者之间的互动，我们自己也能从中得到学习和发展。那这样呢，也能给我们的带来更多的乐趣，我们的工作和生活也由此变得更加丰富。Kirsten's third question in the chat box. Can you share a case which is solution-focused supervision? Thank you.
There are so many cases that I could share, but I think one that stands out to me is a supervision client who had a coach as a client. That coach was very negative towards her own clients. So the challenge was that the coach, so the supervision client's client, sorry, it's a bit complicated to talk about these things, was talking about one of her male clients in terms of he's a narcissist, he is horrible, he is a very bad leader. And that was the problem that this coach, that the supervision client brought to supervision. Maybe I'll leave you some time to translate it.
这个有点绕口啊，就是关于他，就是我们 Kirsten 在 做这个督导的这个过程当中，也遇到过很多的案例。就其中一个例子就是我们在给一个教练做客户，这个教练他的客户，他对他的这个客户，他的客户本身也是一位教练，因为客户呢，他就在日常生活中是非常消极的一个人，对，他是一位男士，然后他是个领导者，但是他的脾性呢又不那么好。
So then this could have created triple negative spiral. So the coach evaluates her client negatively. Then the supervisor of that coach also evaluates the coach negatively because they are evaluating their client negatively. And me as the supervisor of that supervisor could then evaluate my client negatively because they're evaluating their client negatively. So it could have been a waterfall of negative evaluations. Sorry, this is complicated. I hope it's okay to translate.
这比较复杂的就是这个教练他对他的客户本身是消极的，这个教练的督导他就是对这位教练的评价呢也是比较消极的，然后我作为这个督导的督导评价对他的评价又不能那么消极，这样呢就在他们之间可能形成了一个比较消极的一个循环。
So I as a supervisor thought, okay, how can we collaborate to get out of this negative spiral? So instead of saying you shouldn't negatively evaluate your client and your client shouldn't negatively evaluate their clients and should, I try to ask, so what are your positive intentions? And what do you think are the positive intentions of the coach who is evaluating the client negatively? What would you like instead? And then the coach answered, well, so that the supervisor answered, well, my positive intention is I really would like to enable my client to see the resourcefulness of her client. And the positive intention of the coach could be she really wants to make sure that good leadership happens and that people are being treated with respect. So working with what people value and what they want to bring into the world, rather than working with negative evaluations, was so much more fruitful.
面对这样一个就是消极的一个螺旋，我呢探索的问题就是如何帮他们走出这个消极的螺旋。因为首先我们不能直接跟他们，比如说我跟我的督导不能直接跟他说你不应该这样消极的去评价你的客户，也不能说让他去对他的这个教练客户说你不能这么消极的去评价你的客户。那我呢首先是问他就是你有什么积极的意图，就是你觉得有什么，就是比起消极的情况，你可以做一些，比如说假设你可以有什么样消极的积极的意图，然后积极的意图呢，它给你们带来什么样的变化？就是我们换一种思维。我的这个客户就是这位督导，他就说，我想我能做的是让我的客户去看到他其实有更多的资源，这个资源他的客户，让他的客户就是能够也是换一种视角对待他的客户。我们要者，特别是要尊重你身边的人，我们珍视每一个人带来的价值，就是把这种消极的这种评价，然后转换成我们这种积极的意图，可以就是做一个向对方提问，让他假设一下可以有什么样积极的意图。
So in the end, the supervisor that I supervised decided to ask the coach, hearing that you are not okay with what your coaching client is doing, what is important to you here? And how can you support what is important to you in that relationship with your client? And it really helped to shift the situation for the coach, for the supervisor, and also for myself, because we're working on something positive rather than preventing something negative.
我呢就让我的这个客户，他就是这位督导，就是让他向他的这个客户，因为教练去提问，就是说我可以这样说，我通过你刚才的话，我听到了可能就是跟你客户相处的时候不是那么融洽。对你来说，你作为教练，对你来说什么是重要的？你觉得在你们这段关系当中，什么能够很好的支撑着你们，能够帮助你们去转换一下这个视角，去帮助你的客户 从这种消极的状态转为积极的状态。那这样呢，对所有人都有好处，不只对客户，还有那位教练，还有那位督导，包括我自己，对大家来说都是有好处的，都是非常积极的。我们把这个消极的，然后彻底转化成了积极的。Thank you. There is another question in the chat box. Supervisors can help mentors or coaches. Then who could help and supervise the supervisors? Thanks.
So there is a story from book. Terry Pratchett is the author. And someone asks a very wise man, what does the earth stand on? And this person says, it's a turtle. And well, what does the turtle stand on? Another turtle. What does this turtle stand on? Another turtle. What does this? Well, it's turtles all the way down. And I think that's the same with supervision and supervision clients. So you have a coach, the coach has a supervisor, the supervisor has a supervisor, and that supervisor has supervisor. And so I think everybody not needs, but it's very useful for one's own development to have a supervisor. It doesn't matter which level turtle you are, if you are the coach, the supervisor of the supervisor of the supervisor, or the supervisor of the supervisor of the supervisor.
这个话题呢，曾经也是有一本书里有一个人问一位智者说，大概意思就是说，好像我们是导师教练，就是我有我们的督导，督导他其实也有督导的督导，他都可以有自己的督导。这样呢，其实就是一个循环，就我们可以就算我们自己是督导，但是我们也可以拥有自己的督导。这个问题很有意思。那还有其他的问题吗？
Hi, I'm Kirsten. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say thank you for the translation. Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Kirsten, thank you for sharing that philosophies from the document you share. Just one bullet point attract me, say facilitating the emergence of new identity. And I'm trying to link this point back to the example you shared previously that the supervisor gave the negative feedback. That story is how did you really to inspire the client, the coach client, to come up with some sort of new identity, as to see him or herself differently? Is that I understand this item right? I don't know. That's something that's in my mind, and would like to understand more from you. Thank you.
Yes, of course. And maybe would you like to share your question in Chinese as well?
Okay. 我刚才问的问题是说，在他分享的文件当中有一条叫促进新身份的出现，这一条跟前面举的那个例子之间的一个关系，有一个督导，他的那个教练，对教练督导，可能都是给一些对客户的这种一些消极的或者是对这种就是说评价，都在那个过程当中，这一条是怎么展现出来的 ？Yeah, thank you. Please.
So, I think whenever we're asking somebody for what they value and what's important to them, that's very much linked to who they are. So maybe the identity previously was a critical and fixed one. I need to tell this coach that they cannot act this way. Identity as a controlling, quality assuring incident, or quality I don't know how you say it, as an instance who does quality control and who judges. And by asking, what do you value and what do you want to bring into this world? Identity of, oh, I'm passionate about good leadership. I'm someone who wants to support respectful treatment of other human beings. That's a different kind of identity than the controlling one, than the I need to make sure and tell people off or something. So I think maybe that is where the emergence of new identities is linked. And I think it's also very important that I'm not telling anyone what they are valuing, but I'm asking, well, when you're responding like this, what is it that you value here? Why is this so important to you? And that leads to the discovery of who they are, I think. I hope this is an answer to your question.
Yes, and yeah, thank you. That's the because I have a little bit hesitant about identity means here. Yes, pretty clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
那这个问题是在于可能我们就是 Kirsten 女士刚刚在分享中提到，可能你在督导过程中或者是教练过程中，可能会促使他去意识到自己一个新的身份。就是我们做督导或教练的时候，我们会就是问我们的客户，是你觉得是什么对你而言什么是重要的，就是你是哪些东西，然后通过的提问呢，可以让对方就是有新的发现，然后对自己可能有一个新的认知。比如说非常就是对这个领导力非常感兴趣，我非常在意人与人之间交流时的相互尊重。那我们在提问的过程当中，不能去说掌控对方，我们更多的是通过提问让对方去更多的去有自己的发现，是有自己的，然后对自己，比如说我尊重什么，我在意什么，然后自己可能一些新的思考，然后新的反应，然后通过这种方式，然后我们能够促进自己对自己一个新的身份的认知。Thank you, Kirsten. I think that's all for today's Q&A. Thank you for your great answers.
Thank you very much for being with me and with us today. And it's so great to see so many interesting names here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now let me share my slides and I will ask the audience to give their feedback. Thank you for your time to attend our webinar. 那非常感谢大家今天花时间参加我们的论坛。那因为我们也非常期待得到大家的反馈，如果大家有任何反馈或者意见，可以扫大角的二维码，填一下这个反馈表。这里我们顺便讲一下下期的预告。我们的导师讲座是在3月9号下周四上午的11点到12点，是来自美国的 Lisa Fan 女士，她是国际导师协会 IMA 的会长，然后是 Vista Coaching 的创始人，也是 Center for Mentoring Excellence 的首席执行官。她给我们带来的话题呢是如何弥合差异，然后是实现高效的导师辅导。感兴趣的朋友可以扫右方的二维码，然后报名参加我们这次讲座。最后呢，我们跟大家分享一下，是我们在今年9月3号到5号，到时候会在瑞士达沃斯举办第2届全球组织隐性技能管理论坛。兴趣的朋友可以点击右方的我们的官方网址去了解进一步的信息，是3w.GO-TKM.org。今天的讲座就到此结束。非常感谢大家的参与。Kirsten, thank you again for your wonderful sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.